God, I love this place. Mm-hmm. Oh, Lord, open our ears that we can listen. And my prayer is that somehow you use me so all of us can hear you. Amen. I despise change. I don't like change. I don't like transitions. When Betsy and I, quit laughing. When Betsy and I go to the beach, we'll go every time we can. We have a place down there. She always wants to go a different way. Me, I'm a heat-seeking missile. My hands are on the wheel. My mind's in cruise control. We go the same way. I don't like change. It probably started with my dad. Down in Biloxi, Mississippi, we moved 3 times when I was 5 years old. I was at Grandma's house, and my cousin and I were hiding. Dad couldn't find us. So finally, when he did find me, he was really irritated. And he said, "Jody, don't you know it's time to go home?" I looked at him and said, "Daddy, where's home?" I didn't like change from the beginning. And look what I ended up doing as a profession. I mean, Betsy and I moved 8 times. One of the tricky moves was our second church. We were sent to a church out in the country, way out in the country, Friendship. Betsy once said, any church named Friendship, Unity, or Harmony are none of those things. It was a tough place to be. Reese Furr, the head of the Fur Boys, was heard saying, I'd been there about a week, he was heard to say, he'll never make it, he's too young, he's too short, and he's read too many books. What was I supposed to do about that? So after 4 long years, we moved to Pilot Mountain. Betsy had to leave a couple of folks she really liked. But about a week later, I found her in the backyard crying. I said, what's the matter? She said, it's just so hard to move. And I thought to myself, she told me when we were dating, she always wanted to marry a minister. Trouble is, she married the wrong denomination. Her pastor, she was Lutheran. He had been there about 30 years. But she married a Methodist pastor. Why am I preaching on transition? Because of you. Personally, some of you also have been through transition, but look at the church, this church, the transitions you've been through, the change. So I want to talk about change. We Methodist ministers take basically two vows. I believe in God, and I'll go where I'm sent. The Methodist Church considers the second one first. We have to go where we're sent. We don't have to like it. And there have been a couple times I've had a hard time liking it. We have to bloom where we're planted. Elizabeth will have to do that again. Bloom where we're planted. You remember when I came? Some of you do. Been away 10 years. But I came from Gastonia. I did not want to come. I don't like change. I was comfortable. Betsy designed this beautiful house with this wonderful flower garden. I was comfortable. They loved me and I loved them. So when the bishop called late one night and said, I want you to go to Davidson, I said, well, okay. Then I stayed up all night. I called her back and I said, look, I think you can get somebody else. I really do. And she said, well, I'll see what I can do. And then later on, she called again. She started to give me the little speech, and I said, I'll go. She said, what changed your mind? I said, God. See, I made God a deal on my side porch. I said, if this is just the Methodist Church trying to get somebody to follow the famous James Howe, they can get somebody else. But God, if you want me to go, I'll go. And I said to the bishop, this is the 3rd time you've called. God's kind of saying, what does it take? So I came. Didn't want to, but I came. Those of you who are here, you know what I did. I held up James Howe's shoes, pulled them out from under here. They were sort of rough looking, by the way. I bet he cleaned up to go to Myers Park. But I held up his shoes, and everybody sort of got it. I said, yeah, it's a change. These shoes don't fit me. And then I put them back under the pulpit. Most people remember that, but most people don't remember what I said next. I looked at everybody and got real quiet, and I said, you folks are really nervous, aren't you? Because there's only two kinds of people that can follow James Howe. Someone who's really good or someone who's a real fool, and you don't know which one you got. Some people were still figuring that out when I left. Okay, this is not a generic sermon. This is for you. I'm going to say some things. I prepared it. And between what I say and you're listening, there's something out there. It's called the Holy Spirit. And I'm going to try to say what we all need, but I don't know. But God knows. So I hope my words get to you about change and transition. Used to, when I was here, I'd preach a sermon, one of those really good sermons, you know. I gave up humility for Lent. And I'd be back there, and once in a while someone would say, how did you know what I needed to hear? I said, well, I've been behind your sofa all week. But that's not the reason. You know, sometimes they'd say something that was helpful. It wasn't what I said. It's what they heard. But this sermon is meant to be for you, where you are. Transitions. I mean, we don't have any choice. You know, it says in the Bible, God knew us while we were in our mother's womb. So, first transition, in our mother's womb. Can you imagine what you might have thought? I don't want to go out there. It's nice in here. It's warm. I got plenty of food. And I like the background music. Thump, 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 you know. I don't want to go out there. Then we're out there, you know, we're kids, and you get a bike, and you think, oh, I don't need to ever change. I got a bike. And then, of course, you need a car. And then, you know, change. And then, you know, there's kind of the young adult. You have to change and kind of get out there, career, maybe marriage. Then the change comes, midlife. And you got to decide, how much am I going to change? Some people change houses, change wives, spouses, jobs. Men sometimes get a chain and a red sports car. Change. And then it happens. It's happened to me. I'm 79. There's all kind of changes happening, some of which I sure don't like. I'm reminded of the serenity prayer and something else. Serenity prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. But I'm more familiar with the senility prayer. It goes like this. God grant me the senility to forget the people I never liked anyway, the good fortune to run into the people I do, and the eyesight to tell the difference. So, if you remember my James Howe story, the point of this sermon, in case you go to sleep, by the way, if you go to sleep, you're kind of like the old guy that walked in church and his prayer was this, now I'll lay me down to sleep. The sermon's long, the subject's deep. If he should finish before I wake, give me a poke for heaven's sake. So if you go to sleep, here's the point of the sermon. I didn't want to change. God may want you to change. And even if God doesn't, change is going to happen. And God is at every place you change. Every transition, even at birth and at death. In the bulb, there is a flower. in the seed and apple tree. In cocoons, a hidden promise. Butterflies will soon be free. And at the end, you'll sing, in our death, a resurrection, and at last, a victory. God's not even going to quit changing you when you die. So while we're here, what has changed for you? What changes have you gone through? And big thing, this church. All the changes. And God is here again. Now, a sermon is not just a talk. It's taking the old story and translating it. So I'm going to get to Nicodemus. Nicodemus, he goes to Jesus at night. Now, by the way, when John's gospel, any phrase doesn't just mean literal. What John's talking about, he came at night, which means Nick was in the dark. He came kind of fascinated with Jesus. And I don't know what he was getting at, but he maybe had thought about maybe following this guy. But then he got knocked off his props. Nicodemus, you must be born from above. The old translation is born again. And Nick kind of went, what? He wasn't looking for that kind of change. Nicodemus had the old-time religion. He was comfortable. He knew the rules. I don't know what answer he was expecting. I don't know what answer you're expecting today. But Jesus said, you got to change. Well, I can't go back into my mother's womb. You don't get it, Nicodemus. If you want to follow me, if you're interested in me, there's going to be some transition. So, are you born again? Now you're sitting there thinking, what's happened to him in 10 years? Been watching too much TV. No, I mean it. I've been born again, but I needed to be born again, and I need to be born again. I get in trouble. I lose track. Jesus doesn't finish with you. It's like the old man who always at testimony at night, he'd always say, I was saved when I was 18 years old. You know, the guy was like 70, and some kid whispered, has anything happened since then? That's all what he says. Well, maybe you had a conversion experience. Maybe you haven't. By the way, Jesus is still looking. Some of us need a big bang. Some of us don't. But God is a God of transition and change. And so we got to be open to that. And sometimes it's a pretty big change. You know, when he talked to Nicodemus, he wasn't just talking personally. Because a lot of times we make that born again. No. He meant this. Jesus meant this. He didn't say it, but I think he meant this, okay? Nick, if you want to follow me, it's going to be tough. You're going to need something. You're going to need something. You need not just what you got now. You're going to need something else. Because, Nick, I want you to get out there and help the poor, feed the hungry, be with the lonely, stand up to principalities and powers when they are against love. You're going to need something, Nick. I want to tell you something. I still need it. It's tough out there. It's easy to come in here and just go out there and be not changed. Have you ever wondered why Jesus doesn't change things? He's not right here. His Spirit is. He depends on us. So it's like we come like Nicodemus. How you doing? Been to church today, sang some hymns. Jody, I need more than that. I need some change. You're not finished. You're not finished. One of my favorite songs I do sometimes at Vacation Bible School. He's still working on me, making me just what I ought to be. It only took a week to take the moon and the stars, Earth and sun and Jupiter and Mars. How loving and patient he must be, 'cause he's still working on me. There ought to be a sign just across my heart. Don't judge me yet, there's an unfinished part. But I'll be perfect just according to his plan, fashioned by the Master's loving hand. He's still working on you. I don't care if you're old or young, midlife. God is not finished with you yet. You know, remember the potter story? Jeremiah he was at his end. He was frustrated with people. He was frustrated with God. And God said, get up off your fanny and go down to the potter's house and watch the potter shape. Have you taken yourself and put it in the kiln and you're finished, glazed over? God, you're still on the wheel. I'm still on the wheel. I wonder what God's got in mind for you. I wonder what God's got in mind for you and me to help out his boy, Jesus. I mean, Jesus needs some help, always has. Why do you think he picked people like you and me? Don't be conformed to the world. Be transformed by the guy that said, Nick, you need something from above to do what I need you to do. But it's fearful. It's fearful to change. I mean, you remember in the Old Testament when the people were led out of Egypt by Moses? Sounds like good news. But they had to change. They got out there and things were tough. And finally, what they did, it got so tough, they didn't like the change. They formed a Back to Egypt committee. They wanted to go back. They were afraid. You can't go back. This church can't go back. But God's got stuff in mind for you personally and for this church. When I was preparing this sermon, I found something I didn't know about. It's Gibran's poem on fear. It's about a river. It is said that before entering the sea, a river trembles with fear. She looks back at the path she has traveled from the peaks of the mountains, the long winding road crossing forests and villages, and in front of her, she sees an ocean so vast that to enter there seems nothing more than to disappear forever. But there's no other way. The river can't go back. Nobody can go back. To go back is impossible in existence. The river needs to take the risk of entering the ocean, because only then will fear disappear, because that's where the river will know. It's not about disappearing into the ocean. It's about becoming part of the ocean. Okay, the sermon was for you. Where do you need to change? Are you experiencing some tough change? What do you think God is doing with you? Because if you believe me, God's sure not finished. God's never finished. And so, the last thing I want to say is personal. I didn't know I was going to do this. It doesn't say cry in the minutes. I have been praying for you. I love this place. And yes, you have been through some tough transitions. There's an old legend that comes out of China about a wise old man who had a son. His son had a horse. He literally liked that horse. But one day the horse ran away. So the villagers came to the old man and said, "I'm so sorry." The old man said, "Well, this may be a blessing rather than a disaster." A little bit later, the horse came back, followed by this beautiful white stallion. And the villagers said, "This is wonderful." And the old man said, "Well, what's looked like a blessing may be a disaster." A little while later, the young boy got on the horse, fell off, broke his hip and his leg. Some people said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." He said, "Well, it looks like a disaster, maybe a blessing." A year later, there was a terrible war, and all the young men in the village were required to go fight the war, except this young man couldn't go because he was lame. You've been through some tough transitions. And you could, and I could think, well, boy, that's been awful. Well, I want to tell you something. What if it's a blessing? And one of your blessings is called Elizabeth. I know her. She's good. I've been praying for the church. I think she might be an answer. She's got skills, organization. She loves people. She loves Jesus. And she's a good preacher. But let me tell you something that she lacks. You. Here's the deal. In the Old Testament, there's a story about Moses leading the troops into a battle. He lifts his arms, and as long as his arms are up, they're winning the battle. But his arms got tired. And when his arms started falling, they started losing the battle. So Aaron and Ur came over and held his arms up. I've been in the ministry 54 years. You know why I'm successful? You. People like you who held my arms up. So here's what I want you to do. You start praying. Transitions maybe look tough. What if it's a blessing? Hold her up. So, that's about the church. But about you, God is a God of transitions. If you're going through a tough one, God's there. God understands transitions. And maybe, if you're like me, you need to remember you're not finished. God is never finished with us.